Welcome to our Brothers in Conversation podcast powered by Jesse and Shondell. Shondell, you are from?
Bed-Stuy, do-or-die, Brooklyn. That little town.
That's a little town. That's nothing like Hawthorne, Nevada. Population 5,000 cats and dogs. This is Brothers in Conversations. And actually, today's a good day because this is episode number 31. And we are sitting right here on August 20th. I believe that is the best way to see things is exactly as they are. And Lisa and I are always on the same page with things that matter most. And Lisa came up with this brilliant idea for you to connect with us on this Facebook Live. And this is actually practicing the art of communication. I couldn't think of a better person to practice the art of communication. I know Shondell will be a little jealous, okay? But the truth of the matter is nobody practices the art of communication more diligently than Alex Bybee. So, welcome to the program, Alex. This is going to be outstanding. Just thinking about that title, Practicing the Art of Communication. This is not rehearsed. What are your thoughts when you hear that title that we're going to be exploring, the two of us?
Yeah. Well, I think that practice is the right word because it is a daily practice. I think that we often have to check in and blend with the environment and the people that we're communicating with. And so I don't know that it's ever something you perfect, but it is an ongoing practice. So I think that that's a fitting title.
Perfect. And think about what you do. You've done some amazing things after graduating from the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm not going to get into GPAs and so forth now, although yours was pretty high, but you realize that, do you know you're following my footsteps? You know that was my first school too, right?
Yeah, that's right. We partially share an alma mater.
What do you mean by partial?
But then you defected. to the rival institution.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Bybee. I deflected to the rival institution, right? What if I had a full ride art scholarship, fine art scholarship for UNLV that UNR would not give me?
All right, okay. I suppose that warrants the defection.
So is it really a defection or is it a reflection? The brother was reflecting on what he could do.
Okay, there you go. See, he's spinning this one and he's doing a good
job.
This is one tactic in the communications toolbox.
Wait a minute. So are we spinning or are we truth telling?
Somewhere in between, maybe.
Okay, so
I mean, it is truth-telling that you are right. You did go to the university. You did receive that scholarship, and that I would have done probably the same thing. It's a very enticing offer to go full ride on an art scholarship.
Okay,
so,
you just got yourself off the hook with that last comment, right?
Okay, good. I was hoping I would. I think you were trending in the wrong direction.
I was going to go cultural on you. I was going to go birth order on you. I was going to go timing on you and let you know what the sign of the times were in Reno, Nevada in 1974. Okay?
That's right. That's a good point.
All I'm saying is my complexion mattered back then.
Yeah.
I grew up in an environment where my complexion made a difference for others. I didn't let it make a difference for me, but others intended to make a difference for me. I was more accepted at UNLV based on my complexion than I was at UNR based on my complexion.
Yep.
Isn't that funny?
And now UNLV is, I think, the most is either the second most or the most diverse campus in the nation, actually.
I did not know that. That's why I love talking to you. You always know these kind of details. I do know that they hired their first black university president recently at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, between the two of us, we have all the facts we need.
Dude, why do you think you're on this program? We got this thing covered in full range, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I do think Shondell could maybe round us out a little bit, but I think that in his absence, we'll do our best to keep up.
Listen, if I got Alex Bybee and Shondell Newsom and Jesse Farrell in a circle, there's not enough room for all three of us. He's got to stand on the sideline for this one because this is Alex Bybee Day. In fact, let me tell people a little bit about you.
All right.
Let me tell people a little bit about you. You have done some incredible things as we diverged just a little bit from the actual topic. Do you know I won't tell your numbers because I don't have the permission, but do you know you made more with your first job out of college? Okay, what was your first major job out of college when you got recruited from Reno to come back to Las Vegas? What was that first job?
It was, I went to work at the Public Education Foundation as the Director of Development.
Okay, that job, I know how much you made on that job. Do you know that you made 3 times more annually? You tripled what you made annually than I was making after multiple college degrees and being out of college for 10 years. Your salary tripled my salary.
Wow.
And I was a director.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you took that and you parlayed that for other opportunities. And the latest one that I'm super proud of you for is the Director of Development of Community in Schools. Tell us a little bit about that, because you got to be a wonderful communicator to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate. My role now at Communities in Schools is strategic partnership. So, communication does matter, because when you are serving, a constituency and communicating with different stakeholders, whether they be elected or other nonprofit partners, you always want it to be rooted in respect and love. I think that those are two really fundamental elements of good communication.
Oh, good.
And a good ratio of listening and speaking. I think that those are the key elements that I find bring value in this role.
I agree with you. The one thing you didn't say it, but I know, knowing you intuitively, you just probably so used to it. I believe one of the key parts of that communication cycle too that I think is essential is also listening. I think because more people, I believe the better listener you are, the better communicator you are, because most people do not listen well in the art of communication. They're typically poised for what they're going to say next. So they're thinking about what they're going to say next, and especially depending on the company. And in an environment like where you work, and I think it's more exacerbated rather than less, because people have this thing. You and I, you learned it. We because Lisa took you to this great educational piece when you were, I think you're probably 12 or 13. And we learned this word femage at a place where you learned femage, fear of image. And many people have that femage, that fear of image. So oftentimes they're concentrated on how they're going to be coming across, where they're not necessarily listening or hearing everything that's being said. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that has been even more prominent in the era of social media. I think that oftentimes the persona that people curate online through social media channels or otherwise, sometimes there's a gap, or there's a differentiation in how people show up, either in the physical world or the online world. And so when you bring up that term that that I learned at the camp that Mom sent me on, and then the camp that you two also attended towards the end to sort of reinforce those practices at home, I think that we live in a world where there's incentive to have image, and it's incentivized through the engagement and the reinforcement and validation that people get from presenting that online. So I think that we live in an era where people have a greater tendency towards the fear of image because of all the ways in which image matters now.
I agree with you, Alex, and I would say this. I would say that the larger percentage of people behave exactly the way you just said, but I think there's another fraction of people that are quite the opposite, and they're putting on the things that they're putting on social media is they stub their toe, or they cut their finger, or they had an accident, or they're in the hospital, or they're having surgery, and those people tend to put the most tragic of events, time after time after time after time. If I stub my toe, you're never going to hear about it. If I'm having a surgery, you might find out about it slightly before or after it, but you're not going to see it on social media. I'm not putting those people down for people that actually choose that, but sure. I'm saying that there's the opposite, but I think it's a smaller fraction of people where every time you go, if we were to go to look at their social media, how they're showing up, it's always the most tragic of things. I believe I know why they do that. Why do you think people that choose that route, why do they do that?
Well, I think that human beings are hardwired for connection, and oftentimes if there's some sort of trauma in someone's life and they're looking for a sense of community or a sense of comfort from the experience that they've just had, I would imagine that turning to an online community where they feel connected to friends and acquaintances and family, perhaps it helps them. Perhaps there's some sort of catharsis to sharing those experiences on their social media accounts.
I think that was extremely, when you're talking about practicing the art of communication, you just articulated that extremely well. Let me dissect that for people that are not at the educational level of Alex, with no disrespect to them. What Alex is saying, in my opinion, is oftentimes people are craving that sort of an attention, and a lot of that kind of negative capturing is because they want you to see what they're going through. They want you to see their challenges or their woes. And so part of that is their form of communicating is saying, look at me. I look how damaged I am. Look how in trouble I am. Look how hurt I am. So you can say, "Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry that you broke your leg. Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry that you're having surgery on your knee." Or they almost questing that attention. I think it's a quest for attention. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I think it's a really complicated dynamic, particularly because I think in the cultural conversation right now, particularly with the increasing influence and platform of leaders and researchers like Brené Brown, vulnerability is seen as a key concept in courage. And I think that oftentimes there's actually a fine line between vulnerability and authenticity and I think oversharing. And I think that sometimes if people have yet to come to understand the full concept of vulnerability, I think that sometimes oversharing feels like that, and yet it's not the same. So I think that there's a lot of complexities and nuances.
Yeah. Well said. And when it comes to communication, what do you think is the biggest challenge that most people have in terms of communicating effectively?
Well, I think that I think that the fear of rejection is a really powerful fear that human beings have as again, people who are hardwired for connection. And so really what I would imagine gets in the way, although I'm sure it's different for every person, is there's an exposure of one's interior life, one's thought processes when they communicate, because they're vocalizing what is otherwise invisible. And so I think that there's a fear that one may say the wrong thing, one may offend, and that may lead to some sort of rejection. And I think when people are in fear, there are actual bodily and physiological responses to that fear that cause them to have shortness of breath, to have a racing heart, to have increased blood pressure, and all of those physiological responses actually get in the way of being able to think clearly and to communicate one's message effectively.
I think you're right, Alex, but you know what? I think that they are unaware of that campaign. I think that campaign is going on in the backdrop. Much like a Windows program. Yeah. Like it's like a Windows program when you sign onto your computers, there's all kind of stuff going on in the backdrop that you don't even see, you're not aware of, that runs the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why education is so valuable, and why I think in particular social emotional education and teaching young people what is happening in the background. Because when you develop an awareness around those responses, you have, I think, greater agency and ability to manage them and move through them.
I love it. What's your biggest key for when you walk into a room, okay? No matter what the room is, I'll paint a picture. When you walk into, let's say you're at a fundraising event, and there are a number of decision makers in that room, and some collegiate folks in that room, some normal folks. When I say normal, as in no big status or whatever. along with a couple few status symbols. Maybe there are some seniors and some Congress folks in the room, and they're all mixing up. When you walk into the room, what is your tactic for setting yourself up to communicate effectively in that room?
Well, I think that every room is different and every program is different, right? And I think that it's always coming to understand what role do you play in relationship to that room. So is this an event that you're staffing? Is this an event that you're sitting on the board of the organization that's hosting? Are you a guest? And I think that helps me kind of adapt and understand what level of presence to bring to the space. And then I think really what's important is I always ensure that I think about the person or group that I'm approaching from a human first approach. So as opposed to thinking, this person has X title or this person has Y history, I really try to strike up conversations that allow people to light up about things that they're passionate about that they wouldn't normally expect to be asked about. So, I remember when it was years ago, I was in New York City, and I was there with Mom, and I think it was for one of the performances that I was doing. We were performing in the Veterans Day Parade, and we went to an event with Janice and Aaron, and good family friends, of course. And Joe Biden, the vice president, was speaking to dedicate a statue for infantrymen that were going into battle in Afghanistan in the early 2000s. And anyhow, I bring this up because I think it's an anecdote that supports this notion, which when I was in the line to meet the vice president, as opposed to asking about politics or some policy, I remembered from my film studies class that he is a distant relative of Preston Sturges, who's a renowned film director. And so I remember asking him about his relationship to this person and that history. And I think what happened was a shift for him in mindset from I'm being lobbied for a particular issue, or somebody wants to talk about what's it like to be friends with Barack Obama, and really trying to get to the heart of a person and trying to give them space to talk about things that allow them to feel more human and more seen.
That's a pretty powerful case study that you just shared. And you're taking me in a little bit of a tangent of a different direction. I'm going to follow you in that direction because I love where you're going. And I'm going to swing back and add an additional question to what you said about how you manage yourself when you depending on the room and so forth. And you're right, every room is very different. But I love what you just did with that because that's actually phenomenal. Most people don't do that. Most people, and no disrespect, but that's why we're having this conversation, is to help people. Many people just follow the crew at chow time. They do what everyone else is doing. To the point of the case study you just gave. I was at an event, a leadership event, with the top professional speakers and authors in the world in Los Angeles. It was in 2004. And there were 4,000 attendees at this event. And one of the signature speakers is Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy has written probably 84 books now. I mean, he's just amazing. He's my role model and mentor, and as he is Lisa Farrell's as well, even before I knew her. Anyway, so I come from the world of casino marketing. I spent 36 years in hospitality, and 18 of them were casino marketing as a casino marketing executive. And many celebrities have passed through my fingers, whether it was Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Louis Gossett Jr., Whoopi Goldberg, Bruce Willis, on and on and on. And same thing with your mother, Lisa. She's spent 35 years in television broadcasting. She's had many celebrities where she's actually touched, and the intimate lives run through their fingers. So I'm not a celebrity stalker, nor I'm used to standing in line. I had an authority where I could go to the front of any line of any hospitality ever. And I could write Alex Bybee a line pass to go to the front too. So I'm not used to standing in lines. Well, I'm standing in a line of about 300 people waiting to shake Brian Tracy's hands. And I can see them all saying the same thing. Oh, hey, Brian, I love this. Oh, Brian, I love you. And I thought, just like you, what can I say to this man that I don't seem like the crowd? And what can I say to him that would really be something meaningful to him? And I go, I got it. So I walked up when I finally got my turn, and I don't usually stand in lines, I shook his hand. I said, Mr. Tracy? He says, no, call me Brian. I said, Brian, just reading the first chapter, the whole book was phenomenal, but just reading the first chapter of your book, Action Strategies for Personal Achievement, has done more for me in my life than multiple college degrees. You know what he said, Alex? Tell me more. I don't have any more. I saved that up. It took me a minute to figure that out. I don't have any more. But just like what you did with the senator, I did with Brian Tracy, and it resonated with him. It was because, and by the way, it was true. It really was true. I wasn't just making it up. It was really true. I think when we speak to one another very authentically and very meaningful, I believe that raises the quality of communication. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think when you're engaging with people who either in politics, or if this person that you met is an influencer or an author or a speaker, people who have a lot of experience engaging with people, I think that they tend to be pretty perceptive in the type of disposition or person or objective or agenda that one may have. And so I think that it's really important to be authentic, to be genuine, and really be human first. Really think about who is the person standing in front of me.
I love it.
And how can I see them for who they are?
I love it. So let me ask you this. How do you show up at, not all, but most, as long as there's nothing affecting you physically or mentally or spiritually, and let's say you're in an okay place, okay to good place. How do you show up at family dinner, since we're in the same family? No, I can't wait to hear this. I said, I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I think that how you show up in family spaces can be really different than how you show up in the world. And I think that part of that has to do with the intimacy that's built in the family unit and the level of comfort that one has there. I think that because of that comfort, there's a high degree of variability that I bring to our family dinners. I think if I'm feeling dejected, I think that all of you are going to see me feeling dejected. I think if I'm feeling energized, you're going to see me feeling energized.
Yep.
If I'm feeling antisocial, you're going to see me withdrawn. If I'm feeling social, you're going to see me engaged. And I think that that's the beauty of the family unit, is that we all get to show up with what we have and who we are that day. And some of the thought processes or strategy that one may need to do if they're in a work or professional space sort of washes away in the family space. So I would say that it's hard for me to think about a consistent description with how I show up to our family dinners, because it feels like I show up in different ways, given how I'm feeling, given how the group's feeling, given the occasion, if it's a birthday or just, Sunday dinner. So that's what I would offer.
Well, actually, it's a brilliant answer, and thanks for your honesty. I really appreciate it. I had no idea how you were going to answer the question. And by the way, it's very truthful, and that is how you show up. How do I show up at our family dinners? Minus our last conversation. Pretend like you don't know, because we just had a really great conversation. Don't use that last conversation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think that you're really conscious of blending. I think that I think that it's always difficult for anybody to come into a family where there's a mom who has 3 kids that share, this history and this lifetime together. And I think that you're really conscious about reading the group dynamic, about figuring out how to blend and how to adapt. I think that that's to the point that I just brought up about how I can show up around variability and showing up authentically. My hope is that you would be able to feel that way with us. But I think that given some of the terrain that you've had to navigate with the family dynamics, I think that you're really conscientious about how you blend with the group.
Well, first off, I don't want to blow smoke up your pants. You're the last person I'm going to blow sunshine up your pants. for many reasons, and I won't explain all of them. But I have to say that your intelligence, your universal intelligence, not just your IQ, your desire to grow your EQ, your emotional intelligence, is quite phenomenal. You got a great blend between EQ and IQ and SQ and PQ, practical intelligence, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, and IQ. And you reading that, and we've never had this conversation, right? You reading that is phenomenal, because I did not know that you knew that until right now.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to surprise you, and so since you know it already, smarty pants. Okay, so let me put my words to what you said. What you said is absolutely spot on. But Alex, I don't just do that at family dinner. I do that on a coaching session. I do that from the stage. I do that in my own families. In my first family. You guys are my family. You guys are my second family. My first family will be my brothers and sisters, my father, blah, blah, blah. When I'm in their space, I do it in their space. When I'm in a group of leaders, I do it with leaders. When I'm in a group of teeny boppers, when I'm with Marin, my granddaughter, I do it with Marin. Why am I doing that all the time? Why do you think I'm doing that all the time? I don't do it just with family dinners. I literally do it all the time. I do it with my mother-in-law. When I'm hanging with my mother-in-law, if I'm in her space or she's in our space or we're in somebody else's community space, I'm doing it all the time. Why am I doing that? What do you think?
Well, I think that part of it's probably motivated from consideration and kindness and wanting to be mindful of your presence and energy in a space.
You're such a smarty pants.
You know, I think, and I think that there is a lot of really interesting and rich dialogue to be had around the how do you balance blending, which I think is a considerate approach and a mindful approach, with authenticity. And it's a question that I ask myself all the time.
Well, okay. So when you say you ask yourself that, are you asking Alex Bybee, am I doing this consistently? Or are you asking Alex Bybee, how do I do this?
Yeah, I think I'm asking myself that question consistently. I think by virtue of having, a lot of mentors in my life, including my family and including those in the community, I think I've seen a lot of different approaches in how one leads or how one connects. And I think all of us have a tendency towards a particular set of ways to connect versus others. And on the question of blending versus authenticity, what I'm finding in that question is that you always want to lead with authenticity, and then you want to blend as a secondary kind of strategy. You want to show up as who you are so that people can see and hear you. And then you kind of want to soften an edge or sharpen an edge depending on the space that you're in or the purpose of the conversation. But I do think it's a tough question, and I don't know that there's any particular one answer to it.
Well, but practicing the art of communication is the name of our podcast here today, and that's what you're doing. And you're actually, people listening to you, Alex, they're going to be, if they really knew, well, they can tell. If you look at your face and look at my face, you could tell you've got a few more years of youthfulness in your face than what's in my face. So they know that. So they know that you're not 60 years old or 50 years old, but you sound like you're very wise. You sound very educated. And by the way you broke it down is spot on. I'm going to break it down in more layman's terms, but I'm going to say the same thing you said. And I never knew that you even knew that. And quite frankly, I do think it could be a dichotomy between, whether it's authenticity versus blending versus authenticity. I don't have the desire to force myself to fit in to any environment. Because my upbringing and my life learning, I was always told that I did not fit in, okay, for ridiculous reasons. So early in life, where most of us are looking to fit in, so we have friends and we have, you get along with family, and I don't do what I do so that I can fit in. The reason why I do it, in fact, I call it my dimmer switch. I have a dimmer switch concept for every single room that I walk into. If I walk into a room and my beautiful wife Lisa is in that room, I turn on my dimmer switch. I have one question. Can my behavior and how I show up, can she stand under my light? Is my light too strong? Is my light too dim? Is my light, do I need to adjust it up or down? I use a dimmer switch. There are people that I walk into the room and I'm having a challenge standing under their lights because they're so bright and they've got all this magnetism and all this life experience and all these accolades and blah, 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 blah. I'm now in a very learning capacity. I love learning more than I love teaching, quite frankly. So my goal is to use my dimmer switch at the dinner table, at family dinner, from the stage, from a coaching session. And so if someone cannot stand under my light, why blind them with all your crap? If you can't, I'd turn it down.
I mean, I think there's a lot that shows up for me in that question. I think I have a curiosity around whether or not you have a more refined capacity for that dimmer switch, or, perhaps I do, because both of us have parts of our identities that we've had to navigate in the world that require us, for reasons of survival or acceptance, to be more perceptive. So
unbelievable.
As a gay man or as a black man, do we have to be more perceptive and blend in the spaces we're in so that we can navigate and operate more effectively?
Yes, spot on, Alice. Well taken. Check it out. When I walk into, you speak from the gay side, I'll speak from the black side, and then we'll verse. I'll give you my opinion on the gay side, you give your opinion on the black side. Here it comes. You want to go first or second?
I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Okay, here it goes. From the black side is what I know about our world, society, primarily from the U.S., not quite the same in Europe. I've traveled to other countries in South Africa and Europe and Guatemala, and it's not quite like it is in America. It's harder. I did not learn how to truthfully be okay with being black until I went to South Africa. That was 2014. I won't say I struggled with it. I say it was a lot of work. It was no work with me just being my authentic self in South Africa, because those people have come through some major difficult times together based on races and apartheid and all that stuff. And they've come out the other side, and they know that we're all one people. They live it. So I learned it there. And so for me, the reason why I do it is because I know many people have misconceptions about what being black means. How we sound, how we talk, how we look. They have a certain expectation, and typically a much lowered expectation of what being black means. They don't realize that there's a range of people of every race. There are good, bad, and ugly in all races. And so black people get stigmatized for being a certain way, and I use that to my advantage rather than being depressed by it. I let you think I'm stupid. I let you think I'm uneducated. Now, once I start speaking, you realize there's something different. If I keep my mouth shut, all this dark nature, I know what most people's preconceived notions are about me being black. But I don't see myself that way. The world does. So I see that as an advantage, not a disadvantage. But I have to be very mindful and responsible how I used. I was at a occupation. I'm going to say it. I was at Bellagio. I won't say the name, but I had a senior level boss call me into the office as an example. He called me into his office. He says, "Jess, you know why I called you into my office?" I said, "No, sir." He says, "I want to let you know that our average premium client here at Bellagio is from 65 to 70 white man." He says, that is our number one target. That's our best client. And I've received some complaints about you and how you talk to people. And people like that are not used to people that look like you speaking the way you speak. I'm going to need you to dumb it down or I'm firing you. High-paying, six-figure job, number one in the world at Bellagio as a hospitality offer in hospitality and gaming, and I'm being told if I don't dumb down my language, I'm going to get fired because they're not used to black people being intelligent. What say you, Mr. Bybee?
Well, I wish that I could say that I was more shocked at the story that you just shared. And yet, based on the number of conversations I've engaged in with you and with other friends of color, I think those experiences, there's a consistent thread in discrimination in the workplace or discrimination in the community. And so what I'm hearing is you were being directed to blend in a way that, wasn't authentic to who you were, because there was a power dynamic or a differential, and the supervisor was requesting that you curtailed to the expectation based on the color of your skin, which is, absurd.
Alex, do you think I was trying to sound intelligent at work?
I think you were just being who you were.
Yes, that's all I was doing.
Yeah.
So how do I answer him? How do I accommodate that and keep this job that I want? How do I answer my boss? You tell me.
Mm-hmm. I think that this is the fundamental challenge that so many people experience in this country, which is, do I sacrifice my authenticity or my identity for the sake of my livelihood? And I think that that's an unfair position for us to ask people to be in. And oftentimes it's Black Americans, Latinx Americans, LGBTQ Americans, undocumented Americans that are placed in those positions more frequently than their peers.
Every single job in corporate America that I had on the rise, from a busboy at the Stardust in 1976 to executive director and casino marketing executive at Bellagio and Hilton's and all those, every single station I was faced with that kind of dialogue from superiors and supervisors towards me.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, your earlier point, we've been practicing this quite a while, right?
Yep.
Right. So
Yep.
So what?
Because before the dimmer switch was a mandate, and now it's a choice.
Right. No, that's good. So what I said to my boss, Alice, I said, you know what? I said, I will do my best. But when I said that, what I was also saying is, I'm not going to be inauthentic. So I'll be mindful of who's in my surroundings, and I would tend to shorten my words and say less when there are more eyeballs on us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I chose to do. So let's flip the script. So from the gay perspective, so I just gave you a black, and listen, we could do a whole program just on the nuances and the challenges and the triumphs. I see this thing of color. Initially, in my early life, I saw it as an albatross, and I questioned, do I even really want to be black with all this crap? But a situation happened that helped me understand that this is my turn. This is my role to uphold this and show people with grace how it can be done, to know that we are all just people. We're all one. So let me flip the script on you. What perspective do you have from the gay side of what you've had to overcome or battle or challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think that having the conversation around sexual orientation is also important to layer on gender identity, because I think that there's a lot of expectations around, if you present as a man or a woman, or you identify as a man or a woman, whether you're straight, gay, bisexual, asexual, there's a set of expectations around how you perform your gender and how you exist in the world as a man or a woman. And I think that historically, because as a gay person, I can speak differently, or I have different interests, or maybe more emotionally in tune, which, by the way, are not characteristics of all gay people.
Right.
But they are culturally what people have come to associate with gayness, right? Because there's been a preconceived notion around what that means, or the expectations around how you're supposed to show up. And I think that it's been difficult. It's been difficult in spaces that are frankly, to just be candid, it's more difficult in spaces with straight men. I think in the workplace, I think that oftentimes there can be a discomfort or an uncertainty around how to approach or how to engage. And I think that that's not, of course, true of all straight men, but I think that if early on in your life you have negative experiences from being bullied or called names because you're a gay man by typically straight men, I think you carry some traumas with you that cause you to be adaptive or reserved or withdrawn because it's a safety or a survival approach or mechanism. And in my very early career, I've only been in the workforce for 4 years now. When I think back to the personas and the profiles of those that I have been either threatened by or told that I didn't know my place or that I was presumptuous or whatever it may be, they all share a thread that they are white, straight men. And I think it's important to bring that up because I think that when people operate in the world of privilege without recognizing the impact that privilege has on others or their expectation.
Oh, no. Alex, we can't hear you. Something happened to your sound? Oh, I don't know what happened. I've never seen that before. Oh, boy. You're making a very good point. Let me get Lisa involved. Lisa, if you can hear me, can you hear Alex? You need to come and let us know. I can't hear him anymore. Let's see. Unmute. I'm going to unmute. Okay, Alex, go ahead and speak.
Okay, how's this?
Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. You were at the climax of a great point.
Where was it?
You were talking about the dichotomy between the straight white man and in an environment. We okay, Lisa?
No, I can't hear it.
Well, Alex, go ahead and say one more thing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So basically, you're making the point in that there's a consistency that those similar conditional challenges that you face are coming from that same privileged space of straight white man. That's where you're at the climax of that point.
Yeah, and I think this is a difficult conversation because I never want to ascribe a particular set of behaviors or expectations or assumptions about someone because of their identity. I'm sharing that when people who carry privilege don't recognize that and how the privilege shapes how they show up in a space and how that power differential or dynamic can alter people's approach, behavior, or how they can fully show up, that can be problematic.
Oh, 100%. And by the way, and that's where we are very, very consistently in alignment with the challenges that we both face and must overcome. Yeah, and at the end of the day, we can't make it a full-time job because we still have to live too. And so,
yes, that's true.
So I think when you're talking about practicing the art of communication, I believe you've had a lot more practice based on who you are and how you are. It's been very important for you to take that on very seriously and get your best, because I do what I call, I'm going to tell you what I do, and you may do something similar or you may not. I would love to tell the story, but I want to keep this short. There's a situation that happened when I was 21 years old with a female that made me question my blackness. And when I talked to myself in the mirror after that questioning, asking myself, do I want to be another color so I don't have to deal with this? My answer was no. Making a super long story short, I said, no, I don't wish I was different. This is for me to overcome. This is for me to advance. This is for me to rise. I'm not going to see it as a disadvantage and forget about that person that's making me feel that way. I'm putting her down. I'm done. And then I came with a concept that I've been practicing along with my dimmer switch. And I told myself, I'm going to learn to communicate so well that it's no longer about the color. The concept I use is I call it transcending the color. I've chosen at age 21, looking into the mirror, 3 feet from the mirror, talking to myself, broken, devastated, destroyed, embarrassed, frustrated, confused, all at the same time. And I came up with the concept that I am going to put this in this place where I can make a transition that it's no longer about the color because of the power of my ability to communicate. Yes, I'm as black as they come. Get over it. Now what? What's the point? Why are we here? What are we discussing? Let's don't be focused on that. I'm going to transcend the color of everyone that I touch, whether it's a teacher or a friend or a loved one or my son and you. I don't care who I touch. I'm going to get you to a point very early in the conversation that it's no longer about how black I am. And it's about whatever it is we engage. I call it transcending the color. What are your thoughts? What say you?
Well, two things come to mind. I think that for identities that are marginalized in our country, whether it be Black Americans, gay Americans, I think that this notion of excellence and having to work twice as hard or to develop skills that are more refined just in order to have a seat at the table, I think that that's a strategy that can work. And yet I think that in some ways it's an unfair reality that marginalized identities have to navigate in this country, that you have to transcend a part of your identity in order to get a seat at a table or to be heard or to be respected. So on the one hand, it's a strategy that can be successful. And on the other hand, I think it's important to call out that it's an unfair set of conditions that exist that one must transcend a part of their identity just to be heard.
100% spot on. Here's what I say to that. I love it. It is unfair. I don't live from that perspective. I don't even think of when I hear you say it. You're accurate. But here's the thing, Alex. If it was fair, if life was fair, we wouldn't learn anything. Look what I've learned from this unfair conflict. I've chosen to, and I just made it up. Don't ask me where it came from. Maybe it came from above, but it dropped down and said, learn to communicate so effectively that they get over your blackness. And that is, and I'm still doing it. I'm still practicing getting better and better. I don't resign myself that because I've been at it this length of time that I am there. I'm better, but I can still get better. And so that unfairness is teaching me a whole discipline that I might not have pursued if it wasn't for the unfairness. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that both things can be true at the same time, right? The set of conditions can be unfair, and as a result of having to navigate them, perhaps you or I have developed resilience or adaptive strategies to refine how we communicate or show up in a space, or perhaps we've had to be more perceptive in order to understand how to approach 100%. Or engage. So I think that both are true. I think one, it is unfair that in this country, marginalized identities have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And I think in that pursuit, if there are gifts or if there's resilience or adaptive strategies that one develops, then perhaps that's the silver lining. But I think both are true at the same time.
I love it. And since you and I, your take on this is phenomenal. It's amazing how much you already know about matters like we're talking about and the power of communication. And these are conversations that you and I have never had. I've been in your life since you're 10 years old, and we've never had this conversation until this podcast.
Yeah, and now we're streaming it live for everybody to see.
But we're
dress rehearsal.
You dress rehearsal and practicing the art of communication. So as we're about ready to close, I want to pop you one that I'd love to get your thoughts on. No right or wrong. And by the way, the listeners, I'm hoping that the listeners are taking in what people watching and listening to this, taking in the power of this conversation, because what Alex and Jesse are showing you is a broad range of how Alex has grown up, where, when, and how he's grown up. Jesse, where, when, and how he's grown up. And there's a synergy between our connection that's been there since I've known you. But that's because we both wanted it, and we placed ourselves in the space to do some work for it. So there's a piece that I just recently started developing. It's called relationship comfort. Relationship comfort is a new term that I call a Just Talkism. Is when we have a mother, a father, a sister, brother, a wife, a best friend, someone that we're intimately very, very close to. Oftentimes we embark upon, as human beings, what I call relationship comfort. And this process is about 2 weeks new for me, and I'm going to continue to evolve it. But today, what it means is we find ourselves or allow ourselves getting comfortable, in my opinion, too comfortable in those relationships, because we know when we make mistakes or do things that are not quite right or rude or disrespectful, they're going to let us off the hook because it's my mother, it's my wife, it's my son, it's my daughter, it's my best friend. And I say, I am not going to let relationship comfort set in with me because I think it's a mistake. Tell me what you think about this new term that I just made up called relationship comfort.
Well, I think that people often mistake comfort for safety, and safety should always be there, right? One should always feel safe. But to your point, I think that comfort can allow us to behave or show up or not show up in ways that we wouldn't otherwise do if there wasn't that comfort in the relationship. And so I think that it's a matter of knowing that we have limited time, attention, and energy, and really wanting to be mindful of those that we want to prioritize receive the best of our time, attention, and energy. And hopefully those are the people that matter most to you, which tend to be your family, your friends.
Well said. Well said. So those people that are listening to this right now, Alex, what would you say to them in terms of no matter where they're at in their ability to communicate with, like you say, those that matter most to them, and as they're out into the world, assimilating into the world, what kind of advice would you give to them in terms of how to grow the power of their communication?
I'd say 3 things. 1, all of us have the innate capacity to communicate and connect. So there's no inherent advantage that one has over another. And so by seeking out relationships and situations that allow you to cultivate those skills, I think that's important. I think that the second is comfort is overrated. And the feeling of being alive rarely exists in a comfortable space. And then the third is, listening is just as valuable as speaking, and that both are important to good communication.
Oh, I think that's very powerful. I hope those that are watching and listening take note of that. And if they didn't, rewind the tape on Facebook, because that's actually spot on. I agree with you. I match up with you and everything you said. The thing that resonates the most with me is the power of listening. I really believe it's an underused, undervalued, underrated phenomena. And the power of listening, when you listen extremely well, it actually gives you more to say. So I really believe that more to say that's relevant and important. So I like that. So those ingredients that you're giving those that are watching and listening to this program, I think it's phenomenal. I put my amen on that and say, yeah, I agree. And from the listening, I would say, be very, very mindful of a universal concept that's true, even if you don't know it, even if you don't believe it. And all of life is impacted by how you leave others feeling, how you leave yourself feeling, and how you leave others feeling. So think about when you're communicating with those people, whether it's, like Alex said, the primary people in your lives, or it's strangers or coworkers. Think about the concept of how you leave them feeling. And the number one concept of how you leave them feeling is to leave them wanting more. Alex Bybee, would you love to be another participant on a future broadcast like this? Have I left you wanting more is the question.
Yes, and hopefully I won't be on the road back to Las Vegas and having to evacuate the wildfires in Northern California for the next one.
Well, first off, let me applaud you for taking the time under such challenging circumstances to still stay committed to the broadcast, to standing in. Well, you're standing up for yourself, but Shondell Newsom typically would have been here, and you are absolutely worthy replacement for him not being able to be here, and you're on the road, scurrying away from the fire so that you guys could be safe, and you still bring this brilliance to the table. So quite frankly, my goal was to leave you wanting more and wanting to come back. Lisa and I welcome you back. We do want to come back, and we may talk about the same subject of the power and the art of mastering communication, or we may pick a different one. It doesn't matter. I believe you can hold your own, even if you don't even know. In fact, quite frankly, what we might do is we might create a podcast just for you called I Don't Know What It Is. Like, I'm not going to even tell you what it's going to be, and I guarantee you would show up on the program. Wouldn't that be cool to do a program called I Don't Know What It Is? And we just get creative and make up a concept while we're in it together.
It would certainly prove the point that comfort is overrated.
Well, Alex, you guys be safe out there, and I do want you to get home safely and enjoy yourself. But being a part of this program, I have to tell you, it's been fabulous. And know this: we're sending you much care, much love, as much attention as you will allow. Along with the Dimmer Switch campaign, of course. And that is all, and it really is all about how you leave them feeling.
That's right.
So take care.
All right. Thanks, Jess.
Take care. Have a great trip. Bye now.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.